Hello, everyone. This is Premack, president of the Illinois Mental Health Counselors Association. And today we're going to go over a really interesting technique, the Premack Principle. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. First things first, what is the Premack Principle? So before we get into all the information, I'm not saying it just because it has my last name in it, but I'm saying it because it's a really overlooked technique that a lot of clinicians really do not use. But ultimately, it is a rewards systems types of technique that helps reinforces behavior that you want. So let's get into it. All right, so we're here at simplypsychology.org and we're going to take a look at what is the Premack Principle. So we're going to take a look at some history behind it, as well as what it is, and as well as some criticisms about the principle. So as it says here in the key points, the Premack Principle, also called the relativity theory of reinforcement and the differential probability hypothesis, states that a more desired activity can be used to reinforce a less desirable one. So basically, like I mentioned before, it's just a reinforcement technique. And then down here it says, although the Premack Principle has been criticized for a number of reasons, its derivative response deprivation theory still holds great influence in the psychology of learning. All right, so let's get into the origins. All right, so the Premack Principle states that a more probable behavior will reinforce a less probable behavior. Behavior in itself can reinforce behavior, and the presence of a high probability behavior can make a low probability behavior more likely. And we'll skip past the example. All right, so conversely, the Premack Principle predicts that the presence of a high frequency behavior above baseline will discourage the low frequency behavior. For example, to use the homework example, a child allowed to go to the park excessively is less likely to do their homework, right? Makes sense. All right, prior to the Premack Principle, behaviorists believed that reinforcers had a so-called transsituational nature. And some that is a reinforcer in one context will always be a reinforcer. So for example, a pigeon conditioned to seek pellets will always seek pellets as a reinforcer regardless of their abundance. All right, let's go to the next part. In contrast, Premack's view establishes that animals have a preference ordering of response, and stronger responses will reinforce weaker responses. So Premack's research into Premack's Principle emerged from his 1959 research on the rate differential or probability differential effect. The probability differential effect states that any response A reinforce any response B if and only if the independent rate of A is greater than that of B. That is to say, a response that happens at a high rate can reinforce a response that happens at a low rate. For example, according to this probability differential effect, a rat will continue to run in a wheel whether they are rewarded with water if and only if the probability of the rat drinking water is greater than that of the wheel running. The probability differential effects has found applications such as making the probability that those with developmental disabilities will engage in exercise greater by making access to games contingent upon exercise. Premack, following his original research into the probability differential effect, found that this was accompanied by another. When opportunities to engage in a high probability behavior reinforce low probability behavior, the rate of high probability behavior in itself reduced because of the barriers of the low probability activity, and thus incentivize the opportunity to engage in the high probability behavior. All right? This is called response reduction. Any response A can reinforce a response B if the rate of A is suppressed below its baseline, regardless of which response happens more often. For instance, in one experiment by Eisenberg, people tasked with turning a wheel are more likely to press a bar if the rate of the wheel turning was suppressed below baseline, regardless of how much more frequent wheel turning was than bar pushing. This idea of response suppression then evolved into response deprivation, which has found a number of applications in changing behavior. Right? For example, Doerr found that the response deprivation of drinking a preferred beverage could increase socially appropriate behaviors in adults diagnosed with schizophrenia when access to drinking depended on the appropriate social behavior. All right, so let's get into some of the criticisms. So, some critical evaluations. Although the Premack principle has a wide appeal in fields such as education, academics have supplanted it with alternative theories because of several apparently inconsistent predictions. Often, the Premack principle can predict learning in a way contradicting experimental data. For example, Timberlake and Allison have noted that weaker responses can occasionally seem to reinforce stronger responses, and that stronger responses will occasionally not reinforce a weaker response. Additionally, there can be additional features of the situation not covered by the Premack principle, where the type of learning that occurs depends on the relative rate at which each response must be performed in order to be able to do others. And lastly, some events that do not qualify as a response per se can also moderate the behavior that follows. For example, shocks can punish behavior, but they are not instrumental responses that animals engage in. All right, so now let's get into how we can really apply this behavior in therapy. All right, so now that we've learned about the Premack principle, how do we apply it in therapy? So the easiest way to apply it in therapy is to create a hierarchy checklist of least desirable activities all the way down to most desirable activities. So the least desirable activity that you want the client to do, you pair that up with the most desirable activity. So let's say, for example, a lot of clients do not like to do homework, right? Homework outside of the counseling session. So to really reinforce that homework behavior, you pair that homework with a most desirable activity, whether that is YouTube, video games, massage, online shopping, retail therapy, what we like to call it, so on and so forth. So when you have that hierarchy of things that you like to do, the most likely thing, or one of the most likely things, you would have that paired with your homework activity you want the clients to do outside of therapy. And that way, you can easily follow up with them and say, okay, did you do the homework and did you do the reinforced activity? So that way you can see if the client did do the homework and the activity, they did not do the homework, but they did do the activity, or they just didn't do anything at all. I think I said that before. But ultimately, when we take a look at that, we can work around that in regards to, your different therapy style to really see what was the barrier that stopped them from doing that homework, but they still did that activity. So that way you can help process through that and see if we need to change the behavior that we're rewarding them with, or if we really need to tackle it another certain type of way. But ultimately, yep, that is the Premack principle. So if you made it to this part of the video, that's pretty much it. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. And if you are interested in getting in contact with us, you can call us at 815-787-0515. You can email us at mymca@gmail.com if you want us to go over any mental health related topic, or if you had any questions or anything like that, or if you did want to join IMCA. You can always go to imca.org as well. We have rates for both clinicians and non-clinicians. All right, thank you guys very much. This is Corsair Mack, president of the Illinois Mental Health Counseling Association, signing out, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.